Okay, so the Heilige Gemara. We are in the middle of a discussion about Rav Yehuda, about Rabbi Eliezer, if he says Midairaisa, go back over here. Put my mic on. We are in the middle of a discussion about Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer said on Yosy and Aleph, at the beginning of the parak, Rabbi Eliezer said that Achila and Haktara are going to combine. Rabbi Eliezer Poisel, Lachal Dover Shadarkoi Lahakter and Lahakter Dover Shadarkoi Lachal. It says Rabbi Eliezer held his puzzle, and the Gemara was probing: is it Dairaisa and it's Pigol Mamish because we learn it out of a pasuk, or of He'achel Ye'achel, or is it Darbanan? And the Gemara said that it's a machlekes tanoim what Rabbi Eliezer holds, and the Gemara brought a brisa to suggest that it's a machlekes between the Tana Rabbi Yehuda and the Tana Rabbi Eliezer what Rabbi Eliezer meant. And the Gemara quoted the following brisa: Hashoichet es hazevach, and I'm on Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Hashoichet es hazevach lishtois midamoy lemocher. So you're going to drink something that's dakri lahaktir, which is the dam, or lahaktir mi besorei lemocher, or to be maktir on the mizbech, the basar which is supposed to be eaten. Exactly the case where Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim argue. Or lechal me'ruva lemocher kosher Rabbi Eliezer poisel. Now, from their words poisel, it's the same words as our Mishnah. We could still argue: is it daraisa or is it d'Rabbanan? But the next line is what's very revealing, because the next line is lahaniach midamay lemocher. So he didn't have kavana, an active kavana to do a ma'aseh pigel. I will eat it tomorrow. No, he just had a passive kavana. I won't do it today. I'm going to leave over some of its blood. But I didn't say I'm going to spritz it tomorrow. I didn't say I'm going to eat it tomorrow. I'm just going to leave it over to tomorrow. That sounds like it's less of a problem. What does the Rashi say? Rabbi Yehuda Paisel and Amar Rabbi Eliezer Af Bezu Rabbi Eliezer Paisel v'Chachamim Mashchirin. So Rabbi Yehuda says it's Paisel, and Rabbi Eliezer said that the same machlokes that we had in the first case, we have in the second case, where Rabbi Eliezer is Paisel and the Chachamim are Machshir. You're eating something that you're not supposed to eat. You're eating something you're supposed to be maktir on the mizbech. It's like eating a murid. You're eating something that should have been put on the mizbech. Okay. So, Frank the Gemara, yesterday the Gemara asked Rabbi Yehuda alibu daman. Rabbi Yehuda says paisel. But we have a machlekes tanoim quoted a moment earlier in the brisa about the halacha of having the kavanah of pigol lahaktir davar shadakir lechol or lechol davar shadakir lahaktir. Who do Rabbi Yehuda hold like? Alibu daman. Ilema alibu de Rabbanan. If Rabbi Yehuda is saying paisel in the second case, even according to the Rabbanan who are machshir in the first case, that is counterintuitive. Because hashta umahasam the kamachashev beloshen achila machshir Rabbanan. Over there's a positive kavana to be mefagel, to eat something shaloi bismaloi. Yet Rabbanan said that that's not a problem of pigel. So he said it's kosher. Hacha like kosher. Here it's a much more subtle kavana. I'm just not going to do it today. So why would Rabbanan hold in that case? It would be possible when a real machshav is pigel, they hold as kosher. So this Rabbi Yehuda Paisel does not seem to be able to align with the shita of the Rabbanan. Elamai is going according to Eliezer. Well, the problem with that is, what does the Brayso say? Rabbi Yehuda Paisel, Rabbi Eliezer Tzazogin, Af Bezu Rabbi Eliezer Paisel. So that's exactly what Rabbi Eliezer says. What is Rabbi Yehuda adding? Rabbi Eliezer, Afazu Rabbi Eliezer Paisel, the Chacham Machshirin. So Rabbi Eliezer, Hani Rabbi Yehuda. What's the difference in halacha between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehuda? They both say exactly the same thing. Ella, what you're going to have to say is Kares Ika Beinayu. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Lo Niach Psula Ba'alma Ba'hamna Kares Nami Mechayiv. Rabbi Eliezer Lememar Idividi Pasal Ben Bei Kares. So let's go take a look over here. Back to the Brisa. In the first case, the Chachamim are Machshav Rabbi Eliezer Paisel. In the second case, Lo Niach Midamei Rabbi Yehuda Paisel. Rabbi Yehuda says, according to Rabbi Eliezer, here it's possible. But Rabbi Eliezer, in the case of Pigel, which we agree is worse than the case of Laniach, there Rabbi Eliezer doesn't just say Paisel. There Rabbi Eliezer says it's Pigel Daraisa and it's Pigel Mamish. So Rabbi Yehuda is making that contrast. Here by Laniach Midamai, it's only Paisel Midrabanan, but in the earlier case, where you had Kavanah to eat the Pigel, that is Pigel Mamish. And on that, Rabbi Eliezer commented, Af Bezul, Rabbi Eliezer Paisel, V'chacham Machshirin, the same machlokes they had in the first case, they have in the second case. Come to Hois, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer is only Midrabanan, that it's Mefagel. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer, that it's Mefagel, is Pigel Mamish Midaraisa. So we've supported our point, we've proven our point, that there's a machlokes Tanoim, how to understand the Tana Rabbi Eliezer as to whether or not he holds his Pigel Daraisa or only Midrabanan. Zot Gemara Loi, yeah, you have a very nice shot in this Brisa, but I have another alternative as how to learn this Brisa where your Raya is not a Raya. Because maybe the Chula Alma Karis Leka. Maybe everybody holds there's no Karis at all. And there's no Tana at all who holds the Yechayev Karis for Azam in Pigel where you had Kavanat Lahaktir Dover Shalecho, Shadover Shadakalecho, or vice versa. But V'hacha Gimel Machloikis Bedover. Maybe this Brisa that we quoted is not a two-way Machloikis, it's a three-way Machloikis. As follows. Tanakama Savar, the Tanakama who just quoted a Machloikis, in which case, when someone had Kavanah to eat blood tomorrow, a Kavanah of Pigel, V'hanach Pligi, there's only a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon in this case, in the case quoted in the Reisha. But in the case of Lahaniach, which is the case quoted in the second half of the Brisa, there Divra called kosher. The Tanakama holds that Sai Rabbi Eliezer and Sai the Chachamim hold Lahaniach Midamai will be kosher. That was the Shita of the Tanakama. Then Rabbi Yehuda comes to add, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shavar he holds B'hanach Pligi, I agree. In the first case, there's a machlokes, as stated by the Tanakama. But L'haniach Divra Kol Posel. L'haniach is worse. A moment ago we said, why would L'haniach be worse than an actual kavanah, a positive kavanah? So the Gemara explains, you know why L'haniach would be worse? My timer? Gzera mixes domai atu kol domai. There's a gzera that if he has kavanah, L'haniach mixes domai, l'mochar, he might leave all the dam l'mochar. The chol damai, if he left all the dam l'mochar, it would be psula d'oraisa. How do I know that? The Tanya Omer Lahem Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda told the Chachamim, Iyate moedim li. Do you not agree with me? Sheminichu l'mochar shepasul, that if he left the dam to tomorrow, it would be pasul. Chishev le'anichai l'mochar nami pasul. If you merely had kavana to leave it for tomorrow, it would also be pasul. And now we have a third opinion as to what's going on between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer Poisel v'Chachamim Machshirin. So now the Gemara says everybody holds that there's no psul d'oraisa in a case where you had kavanah to eat davar shadak al-hakir or vice versa. But the three-way machlokes in our Mishnah is how to treat l'aniach midamai. The Tanakama holds Blaniach midamai, everybody holds is kosher and ganzen. Rabbi Yehuda holds that everybody holds it's possible and ganzen. And Rabbi Eliezer holds that in the case of Blaniach midamai, we have the same machlokes as we have in the case of Pigel. So based on this understanding of the Brisa, there is no raya to anybody, according to anybody, that Rabbi Eliezer his psul of Pigel is daraisa. It could all be D'Rabbanan. So just to make it crystal clear so that we'll have no problem gliding into the next Gemara, is that we had two ways presented to us as to how to understand this brisa. In the first way, the way we understood the brisa was that by l'aniach midamai, everybody agrees that it's possible midrabanan. The machlokes is, in the case of pigol, someone who had kavan lechel davar shadakal hakter, what would Rab Eliezer hold? Would he hold it's possible midaraisa like pigol, which was Rabbi Yehuda's approach, or would it only be D'Rabbanan? That was the first approach of how to understand this brisa. The second approach as to how to understand this brisa is everybody holds only D'Rabbanan. And the question that we have is, what is the halacha by l'aniach midamai? According to Rabbi Yehuda, everybody else is possible. According to the Tanakama, everybody else is kosher. And according to Rab Elazar, it's the same machlokes as it is by the case of pigol. So now that we have the two approaches to the brisa, let's glide into the next Gemara. Are you telling me that Rabbi Yehuda holds that in the case of l'haniach midamei l'mocher, Sai Rab Eliezer and Sai Rabbanan hold that would be possible? Right, that was the second pshat that the Gemara wanted to say in the brisa. For Tanya, and this is a fascinating story. Omar Rabbi said, Kishalachti lematzois midai sai. Eitzel Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, mitzui is like the concentration, tamsis. So when I went to concentrate and clarify and purify my learning in Torah by Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, so I guess similar to in yeshiva, we used to have to say chaburas. So the yeshiva would be broken up into groups of 5, and then we would take turns saying a chabura. So every week the bacher that was preparing his chabura would go to the Rosh Yeshiva, and he would say over the chabura that he was intending to say, to the yeshiva can help him fine-tune it. So this is a similar scenario when I went to Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua to help me fine-tune my learning. But there are those who say, I wasn't going to discuss my chabura with the Rosh Yeshiva. I went to discuss his shir with him, so I can get clarity in his shir. You know who was sitting there? By Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, Matzosi Yosef Habavli Yosef Lefanav. Yosef the Bavli was sitting there. Now, there's different pshatim in what this means. Either Chaviv Loi B'Yoser, he was very chaviv to him, Ad la'achas, which Rashi teaches, Ad shagiu la'alocha achas shal zvachim, till they got to one halacha where he wasn't so excited anymore. Or Lashon Acher, v'yechav l'Yosef, kol masher Rav Elazar Melamdei, Ad shagiu la'alocha achas. So either, first pshat is that Rabbi Elazar loved Rabbi Yosef until they got this one halacha, or it's the opposite. Yosef loved all of the teaching that he heard from Rabbi Elazar until he got to halacha achas, which we're going to discuss now. Tosfos has an interesting twist. Ad la'achas means he loved him uniquely. He's the only one who he loved so much. Ad achas, zok Tosfos, b'megillah sesorim de Rabbeinu Nisim Goris, ad la'achas pirish, ad ba'oit. He loved Rabbi Yosef HaBavli unbelievable. V'yesh mefarshim ad achas means ad nefesh shenekros yechida. It means he loved it to the core. He loved him to the core. Okay. V'hashta mashma hacha sheRebbe lomad harbe Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. It's mashma that Rebbe went to his Rebbe Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, who he learned an awful lot from. But the kasha, the B'Seifa Oral, at the end of Park Oral, all my Rebbe said, Kishalachti lilmod Torah etzel Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, when I tried to go learn in his yeshiva, the Talmidim isolated me. Chibru alai Talmido kitana golin shal beis bukya. They surrounded me and like were pecking at me. I wasn't able to learn anything because of my harassment, that I was being harassed by the Talmidim, except for one halacha. So it's mashma that he only learned one halacha, not many halachas. Maybe this might happen later after he broke in. So obviously there's two different things that happened over here. Amar Rabbi. So here is the discussion of the controversial halacha that was the adlachas, till this halacha gave him problems. Someone shechted a carbon, exactly the shayla that we had, and we had two different versions of what the halacha is. Let's review what the two different versions are. In the first halacha, everybody agrees that it's possible. Everybody agrees that it's possible. According to Rabbi Eliezer, the whole discussion was about a machshav of pigel. Is it pigel or is it possible? But in the second version, we have a Tanakama who holds it's kosher and ganzen. We have a Rabbi Yehuda who holds it's possible and ganzen. And then we have Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua, our Rabbi Lazar, who comes up the middle, who says there's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim in this case. Right? So that's the case we're discussing now. Mahu. Omer le kosher. Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua told him kosher. So let's think. If it's kosher, let's think who this aligns with. Let's see who it aligns with. It definitely doesn't align with the first shita. Let's go to the second shot. The first shita and the second shot was that everybody holds that it's kosher. That it would align pretty good with that. Then you have the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who everybody holds it's possible. It wouldn't align with that at all, right? And then you have the shita of Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua, who holds it's a machlokes. Now here, Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua just told him kosher. This sounds very much like the Tanakama, right? Arvis, he asked him the same question that evening, Amalek kosher. Shachris, he asked him a third time, Amalek kosher. So why did he ask him a fourth time, Amalek kosher? Mincha, when he asked the same shayla a fifth time, Amalek kosher. But then he stuck in, Ela Rabbi Eliezer Paisel. But Rabbi Eliezer passes. Finally, this aligns with how we just said, Pshat in the Brisa, is that Rabbi Lazar holds that the same machlokes that applies to pigel applies to lanich midamai. So therefore, you have the shita of Rabbi Eliezer who passes. What happened at that point was Sahavu Panav Shol Yosef Abavli. Yosef Abavli was delighted at that point because finally his Rebbe said something that he wanted to hear. So Rabbi Eliezer saw that suddenly, when he finally said to Rabbi Eliezer Paisel that Rabbi Yosef Habavli perked up and he got all happy. So he told him, Yosef, Kimedumani, Shalei Kivanenu, Shemua Seinu Arata. It seems like up until now you weren't happy with the psak of kosher. You're only happy now that I brought up that Rabbi Eliezer holds it would be possible. So Rabbi Yosef told back to Rabbi Eliezer, you're right, Rabbi Hain, that's exactly true. Ella, why did it bother me? Because my Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda, who I learned by, so Yosef Abavli is saying, I learned by my Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda, Eretz Rabbi Yehuda, Pasel Shonali. My Rebbe Paskin Pasel right away. And the Vibaldi Paskin Pasel right away, when you said kosher, I was a little bit uncomfortable because my Rebbe taught me kosher. V'hechzarti al kol talmidov. I wanted to see other talmidim of Rabbi Yehuda. I wanted to find somebody who could uvikashtili chaver. I wanted to find somebody who heard what I heard so that I could confirm my memory, my understanding of what I was taught by Rabbi Yehuda, that in fact it's going to be possible. And I was unable to find anybody who heard what I heard, that Rabbi Yehuda unequivocally said it's possible. So what happened? Achshav, Sheshanisali possible, now that you finally paskin that it's possible, but only according to Rabbi Eliezer, Hechzartali Avedasi. I got my Aveda back. I found what I was looking for. I was confirmed that I was right with my memory of what the Buddha taught me. Zogu Einav Demei Shal Rabbi Eliezer ben Shemua, the eyes of Rabbi Eliezer ben Shemua turned into tears. Omar, he said, one of my favorite songs, Ashreichem, 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 Talmidei Chachamim, Shedivrei Torah Chavivin, Aleichem B'yoser. So Kol of HaMikra said, and that they said on him this pasuk of Ma Ma Ma, I'm croaking, Ma 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 Ahavti Seira Secha Kol Hayom It's a beautiful nigga. Now we know where it came from. It came because somebody was so happy that he at long last was reunited with the halacha that his Rebbe taught him, and he was taught the same thing. Frek the Gemara, this doesn't work. You know what happened? Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua told him, I'm going to tell you why you were so excited about this. Your Rebbe Rabbi Yehuda is the son of Rabbi Loi. Rabbi Loi was the Talmidai shel Rabbi Eliezer. Lefichach shani lach mishnas Rabbi Eliezer. Let's think about it. What Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua just said was that really the halach is that it's kosher. Your Rabbi Yehuda taught you that it's puzzle. He wasn't really teaching you only, but the hilchos that it's puzzle, because there's a machlokes when it comes to this side level nich midamai, and we pass like the Rabbanan that it's kosher. But since Rabbi Yehuda, your Rebbe, was a Talmud of Rabbi Eliezer, he told you Rabbi Eliezer's psak, even though it was shalom libud hilchos, that it's puzzle. So that was the discussion between Rabbi Yosy Bavli and Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. Zok to Gemara, v'sol kadaitach, divrei akol apostle asanya. But if you learn pshat in the brisa like our second pshat, that Rabbi Yehuda was learning that side the Tanakama and side Rabbi Eliezer hold in the case of l'aniach midomai that it's apostle. So Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua didn't help him at all, because Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua cited that it's a machlokes when he learned like his Rabbi Yehuda who holds it unanimous. So exactly what was Rabbi Yosy Bavli so excited about? Forget. Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua said that it's a machlokes, and Rabbi Yehuda taught him that it's not a machlokes. Elamai, it must be that our second shot in the brisa is wrong. Our first shot in the brisa is right, where where everybody holds that it's going to be a machlokes. But that means it would be a raya that we'll have a raya that Rabbi Eliezer's shita is, in the case of pigel, is that it's pigel gomer. Zok Gemara, because my exactly evidently you plukta karmelei. Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua is presenting that it's a machlokes, and Rabbi Yehuda presented it like it was unanimous. Ela my kosher. So what do you think your pshat is any better? So what do you want to say? That it's kosher Rabbi Eliezer Paisel? Is that what you want to say, Asanya? Is that what you want to tell me? That what he originally learned from his Rebbe was that it's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, which was the first pshat of how we learned the brisa? That doesn't fit so well into this story either. Because Yachi, my homipnei. What did Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua tell his Talmud, Rabbi Yosy Bavli? He says, I know why you're happy. You're happy because your Rebbe taught it to you as a unanimous when it's really a machlokes. But it's not true, because the way you're learning, the way we learned in the first pshat, everybody agrees that it's a machlokes. So it's mashma from Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua's comments to Rabbi Yosy Bavli is that I presented it slightly different than your Rebbe, but your Rebbe presented it differently because he's a Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda. But that's not true. I said exactly the same thing. We have to say that Rabbi Yehuda taught him that it's puzzle, meaning like our second pshat. The question is, so Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua is actually not quoting him the same thing that Rabbi Yehuda quoted him. Rabbi Yehuda said kosher and ganzen, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua is citing only a machlokes. And the Chanami, what did Rabbi Yosy Bavli mean when he said, finally somebody agrees with me? It means the hadulemi ashum passos boilam. At least you agree that Rabbi Eliezer passos. My Rabbi Yehuda told me that everybody passos. And it bothered me, I couldn't find anybody who wrote similar. You at least tell me that there's at least one shita who says that it's pasul, and that was the discussion. The Talmud of the Gemara is that we don't have any raya that any Tana holds that it's the Raisa. We started the sugya that the Mekar of Rabbi Eliezer is a pasuk, and the Gemara said if it's a pasuk, it should be pasul midaraisa. Yet we don't have a raya, we don't have any Tana that we can show clearly holds that it's daraisa. Which Tosfos points out. So Tosfos struggles with it, and he brings down other shittas that maybe hold that it's pigel and ganzen, but that was the discussion. Zot Gemara weiter. Zot Heilige Mishnah. Lo yotzak. Now, first let's understand what is the proper way to process a mincha. So the proper way to process a mincha is the bailam brings his ingredients, they put it into a klesharis. But the way they put it in the klesharis is they first pour some oil at the bottom of the klesharis. I'm sorry? The bailam, it's before the avodah starts, but it's in the preparation stage. We're actually going to have a discussion who has to do these steps. Does a kohen have to do these steps, or could a Yisrael do these steps? So they would put oil, they would coat the bottom of the pan with oil, then they would put the flour on top of it, then they would pour oil on top, then they would mix it together. Now, if it was a baked type of mincha, what they would do is they would bring the baked stuff. Again, they would put oil, they would put the baked stuff on top of it, they would crunch it up, they would have to crunch it up so the baked stuff shouldn't be a hard piece or a solid piece, it should be pieces. Then they put oil on top of it, then they put the levain on top of it, then they moved the levain to the side, then the kohen did the kmitza, he wanted to put it on the mizbeach, and then someone gathered up the levain and put that on the mizbeach. That's the way it's supposed to be done. However, what if they yotzak? What if they didn't have the secondary yitzika? Rashi says, "Hainu yitzika achroina." The betchila noisen shemen bechli v'achach soiles uboil. You mix it, and after you mix it, v'choyze v'yotzek shemen. So I was wrong. I said you mix it after the second oil. After you mix the flour and oil together, then you add some more oil on top. You didn't do that. Lo boal. You didn't mix it. So Rashi says, "Kol noisen kol aloi b'matan harishon shu kodem la'asiyasa." You pour the whole oil in first. Then you put the flour on top. Or v'lo pites, you never smashed up the mincha into pieces as you were supposed to. Or v'lo molach, you're supposed to salt the koimates before you place it on the mizbeach. What if you didn't do that? V'lo henef, the halach is you do tenufa. They did tenufa on the whole mincha. That was before they salted it. There's a discussion that's a little bit out of order. Lo diktik b'seder the tenufa kodemes l'molicha, v'lo henef, or you didn't tenufa, or lo hegish. Again, the hagasha is before the kmitza. They take the whole mincha over to the corner of the mizbeach, the southwestern corner. Oisha passes on pisim merubois. Pasha pshat is, well, the Gemara will discuss it, but at this point we'll learn it means he broke it up into pieces, but the pieces were too big. They were too large chunks, because there's a shear of how small the pieces have to be broken into. Or v'lo moshchan. The halach is by the rekikin, when you brought a mincha of like flat matzah, like a lafa type, they would have to pour oil on it. They would smear oil on it. If you didn't do that, ksheira. So obviously, what the Mishnah is saying is there are certain steps that are supposed to be followed in the process of the mincha that are not ma'akev. He takes the whole mixture of the oil and the flour right before the kmitza. Everything's all ready to go. All he has to do is the kmitza, and then he walks over to the southwest corner of the mizbeach, and he brings it near to the southwest corner.
Just holds it there?
Yep. Nope, he just brings it there. Zog to Gemara, my lo yotzak. What does it mean when the Mishnah says if it's lo yotzak, it's going to be kosher? Even lo yotzak klal, if you're going to say he completely omitted an integral step, ikubik sivba. The pasuk, when it talks about the steps of the mincha, and it talks about the chiyuv to do yitzika, it's ma'akev, as Rashi says, "Dal nemer yitzika ben minchas hasoilas," and it's again repeated by minchas machvas. And we learn when it comes to kochim, whenever something is repeated, it means that it's ma'akev. Ikubik sivba. Ella, you know what it must mean is lo yotzak koyin elazar. What it means is it was done with a Yisrael, which is what you asked right away. So it was done, but it was done through a Yisrael. So at Gemara, if that's how you're going to learn the Mishnah that lo yotzak means it was done, it just wasn't done by Yisrael, well then the Achila lo baro nami lo baro koyin elazar. It would make sense that you would learn the whole Mishnah in a parallel fashion, where the belila was done, but it was done through a Yisrael. Mashma holo baro klal psula. That would be mashma that if you didn't do mixing it all, it would be possible. The shayla is only if a Zohar did it. But that's not true. That's not only know for a fact that if you didn't mix it at all, the mincha is 100% kosher. But none we learn. Shishim Nivlelim, if you have 60 isoinos of flour, it would be mixed into a leg shemen. But Shishim Echad, once you have 61, it's no longer mixable with one leg of shemen. There's too much flour compared to the oil. So we had a kasha. Why? What's the big deal? Put in more flour in your mincha, and it won't be mixable. Big deal. But none, low barrel kshera. Anyway, you're not mechuyev to mix it. So that's all right. You don't have to mix it. It's mashma from our Mishnah the way we're learning that if you don't mix it, it'll be possible. But the same difference, if you didn't mix it, it's kosher. We have our observer answered you right. You don't have to mix it, but it has to be mixable. The famous observer, kolorei lebila and bila ma'akeves boy. If the ratios of oil to flour is mixable, you don't have to actually mix it. But the choshe einarei lebila bila ma'akeves boy. If it's not mixable, then this is not an acceptable mix. But al kolponim, we have a raya that label is ksheir, but the way you're learning the Mishnah, that means label koine lazar, it would be mashur that label klal would be psula. Zokmar, who said that the halacha of yitzika that the Mishnah is talking about is the same as the halacha of bila? Midi area hachadisa. Lo yatzak means lo yatzak koine lazar, but label can mean label klal. Gewaltig. Zot the Gemara. Oy shepezasa pitim merubos ksheres. So, fact the Gemara, I don't understand. Hasha loy pites klal is going to be kshera, because that was the earlier case in the Mishnah. If you didn't smash it into pieces, so pitim merubos meboy. So, if they're bigger pieces, but they're at least broken, for sure that should be kosher. Why is it that the Mishnah needs to speak out separately that it's kosher? Zot the Gemara. My piece of merubos sheriba v'psisin. There's bigger pieces. I'm sorry, no, it was too much ground. You're supposed to break it into pieces, but what if you grind it too fine? That's also a problem.
Big pieces, it's kind of too many pieces.
Right, it means too many pieces that are each too fine. Which means big pieces. So the argument is, if you didn't break it apart at all, it's kosher. So big deal if it's bigger pieces. If they're not broken at all, they're still chalos, which are still in the description of the mincha. Avalacha, it's nishtahin and nishtaher. The loy teres chalosika, the loy teres psizinika. It's nishtahin nishtaher. The Torah refers to the toidah, the mincha is a mincha of chalos. If it's complete, at least it's chalos. If it's chopped up properly, it's pieces. But you're not chala and you're not pieces neither. Kamashlan, let us be kosher. Let's suggest that our mission is inconsistent with Rabbi Shimon. The Tanya Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kol Kohen she'enei moed ba'avoda, ein chelek b'kuna. A Kohen says, the avoda is nonsense, it's made up, it's not from Hashemayim, he gets no chelek of the kuna. Shenemar, hamakriv esdam hashlomim, v'yes hachelev, mibnei Aaron, loy tia sheik hayamin lamona. Dafka, if he's from Bnei Aaron, if he's part of the tribe, meaning he's buys in, then he's entitled to a chelik of the carbon shlomim. Moed ba'avoda yesh lechelik lekahuna, she'ena moed ba'avoda ein loy chelik lekahuna. Ve'en li alazu b'vat. It's not only being moed in the carbon shlomim. Minan l'rabbis tes vav avodos. How do we know that he has to be moed in all of the different avodos that a kohen does, such as yitzikos, belilois, petitos, melichos, tenufos, hagoshois, kmitzos, faktoros, vamalikos, vakabelos, vazoros, vashka soita, varivos egla, vitaharos mitzora, unesis kapayim bein mi befnim, bein mi bechutz. If you count it up, that would be 15 and 16. So the Mefoshim tell us, Rashi tells us, that both nesis kapayim befnim and bechutz in the Beis HaMikdash and out of the Beis HaMikdash are considered one. Minan, how do we know that if he doesn't buy into that, he doesn't get any chelik of the kahuna? Talmud Lomer, mibnei Aharon, avodah hamasur of Aaron. It's only given over to bnei Aaron, meaning people who buy into the tribe. Kol kohen she'enoi moedoi bo, ein loy chelik b'kahuna. So the problem that we have over here is our Mishnah said that these items are not ma'akev. Our Mishnah says that Yitzika is kosher bazar, right? We just said Amishal is Kosev B'Zor, but clearly you see Yitzikos is one of the items that are listed as something that has to be done by B'nai Aaron HaKohanim. So is it a stira? Does Yitzika need to be done with a Zor or not?
It has to be done, it's just that they can't reject it.
But it's theirs to do. It's mashma that it's theirs to do. These are all avodas that they have to do. It depends which mincha we're talking about. Minchas Yisrael, the bas kmitzahi, the minchas Yisrael, they take a kmitza from it. They don't put the whole thing on the mizbeach. They only take a small kmitza and put it on the mizbeach. So therefore, we'll say that's when it gets its kedushas carbon. Mekmitza be'elach mitzvahs kahuna. But the preparatory steps to prepare it for the kmitza, such as the yitzika and the belila, limara yitzika belila sheksher bezar, and that's what our Mishnah was talking about. The Mishnah that says that the yitzika and belila all have to be done dafka by the kohen, that's minchas kohanim, the law bas kmitzahi. So where did it become kaddish? As soon as you put it in the keli, it became kaddish. Therefore, meikar by kuna needs kuna from the beginning step. The Menachos Yisrael, the Gemara is saying that up until the Kmitza, it could be done by Hazar. You only need a coin to get involved for the Kmitza. A Menachos Yisrael is a Mincha that was brought by a Yisrael. A Menachos Kohen is a Mincha that was brought by a Kohen. If the Kohen brings the Mincha, the whole thing goes on the Mizbech. I guess what type of Mincha is it? Right. If you're eating it, you have to get to Hashem. But when the Yisrael is giving it, even when going to the Kohen, he's giving away. Let's analyze this. Minchas Kohanim mehecha is Rabbi leYitzika. How do we know b'chlal that there's a mitzvah of Yitzika by Minchas Kohanim? It doesn't say specifically that step when the Torah introduces the parsha of Minchas Kohanim. We just say it has the same parallel halachos that the Torah already tells us by Minchas Yisrael. If that's the case, Mahasim Ksher B'Zar, Avachanamik Ksher B'Zar. You can't say that the avodah that we only learn from Minchas Yisrael, whereby Minchas Yisrael doesn't have to be done by a Kohen, suddenly by Minchas Kohen it has to be done by a Kohen? How do we know that? Ikad Amri, Amr Nachman Lo Kasha. There are those who say a different teretz. Kan b'nik motzois, kan b'sha'enik motzois. Which is really the same teretz that we said before, but it's expressed in a different fashion. Kan b'nik motzois. Our Mishnah is talking about a mincha that gets kmitza. That's a Minchas Yisrael. Kan b'sha'enik motzois. A mincha that does not get kmitza, which is typically the mincha of the kohen, that there from the beginning it has to be done by the kohen. Rashi just says that according to this version, there are minchas Yisrael as well that are einam nikmatzais as well. So it would include minchas nisachim, a mincha that accompanies a carbon that also doesn't get a kmitza even by minchas Yisrael. But it's the same teretz basically. Amar Rav Michti. We learn from the Minchas Yisrael, exactly like we said a moment ago. So therefore, whatever din the mincha of a Yisrael has, that should apply to the Minchas Kohen, because that's how you know Minchas Kohen. So we have an issue. Reb Shimon seems to say in this brisa that the Yitzika must be done dafka by a kohen. We're forced to say that our Mishnah argues with Reb Shimon. It's a machlokes tanoim. Does the yitzika have to be done by a kohen, which is what Reb Shimon holds, or could it be done even by a zar? My time of the Rabbanon. What does for the Rabbanon who hold that? What does for the Rabbanon who hold that the yitzika does not have to be done by the kohen? Amerkra v'yotzik aleh hashemen v'nosen aleh levina. So when the pasuk goes through the steps of the preparing the mincha, the Torah says v'yotzik aleh hashemen v'nosen aleh levina, and only then at that point ve'avia al b'nei Aaron hakohen v'kamatz. So clearly the Torah is telling you at what point does the kohen get involved by the kmitza. Kmitza ve'elach mitzvahs kuna limod al yitzika v'lila that precede the kmitza sheksher b'zar. I read about Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon b'nei Aaron hakohen he holds is b'nei Aaron hakohen mikrash nidrash lefanavu la'achrav. La'achrav is very patient. From the Kayayim and on, it has to be B'Kmitza. But he holds the word V'yel HaKayanim is also going back on what preceded it. And now we're going to get into a whole new discussion. When you have a word in the pasuk, does it apply to what's following and what's preceding, or only to what's following? So we'll stop here.